Yes.
Okay. Well, good evening, everyone, and welcome to this event. Thank you for joining us this evening here. The International Space University Space Studies Program puts together a series of public events every year to share essentially the activities with not only the participants, but with the public. And today we have a very exciting panel to talk about space entrepreneurship, and that's going to be very exciting for you guys. Before we begin, please, if I can remind you to put your phones on silent, and in terms of emergency doors, we have one there, and then we have two on the right, one on the right and one on the left. At the end, so that our moderator will be Chris Stott. He'll be moderating the session, taking questions from you. If you have a question, please raise your hand, and somebody will come to you with the microphone. So we're happy to have a very distinguished set of panelists today, and they're going to share with you some of amazing insights that they've gained through their careers. And it will be very good insights for people looking and having hopes of starting new business in space field. I think that the experiences, collective experience we have here will be tremendous value to all of you guys. So to start, we're going to start with our moderator, Chris Stott. He's definitely a man of too many talents, and you're going to see here as I read his bio. So Chris is the co-founder, chair, and CEO of Mansat, the world's largest commercial satellite spectrum firm, and third largest space commerce center in the world in the Isle of Man. So alongside Sir Arthur C. Clarke, he's also the chair emeritus of the Society of Satellites Professional International, SSPI, which is the largest professional association in the globe space and satellite industry. Chris is also an entrepreneur working with many space companies, and also he's a faculty of ISU, where he also serves on the board as the chairman, and also he's the chairman of ISU in the USA organization. He is the founder of the International Institute of Space Commerce, where he routinely publishes, and is also a published fellow of both the Royal Astronomical Society and the International Institute of Space Law. Chris is also a TEDx and founder of TEDx ISU and TEDx Douglas. And he's an executive associate producer on several documentaries as well. So as you can see, there's tremendous talents in the panel here that definitely will be very valuable this evening. So please welcome Chris Stott.
Thank you, Omar. Thank you, everybody. And as you can see, entrepreneurs tend to be very eclectic. We do lots of things. Now, if you can't hear us, please let us know. If we start talking too quickly, please slow us down. And what we're going to do tonight is have a bit of discussion amongst the panelists, and then open up the questions from the audience. And please enjoy the questions. You've got a great group of people here today. Each one has done something tremendous in the space industry and is doing tremendous things. Now, rather than me introduce them, what I've asked our panelists to do is pitch to you, the audience, right? They're entrepreneurs. I've asked them to introduce themselves, tell you who they are, a bit about themselves, and a bit about what they do and what their companies do. Because I thought no one knows themselves better than they do. And I wanted you to hear a pitch from people who have done this successfully. Now, what I'm going to do, and we have two great gentlemen joining us as well via video from around the world. And I'm going to go through our panelists here on the stage, ask them to start, and then so with Brian, and then Yonathan, and then Meidad, and then Adil at the end as well. And then we'll enter the questions. Okay? So, Brian, please.
So thank you, Chris. Thank you, Omar. Thanks to ISU for having me here today. So the first and most importantly is I am an ISU alum from 1990. Perhaps many of you weren't even around then. But ISU is its 30th year. That was the third session. It was the Space Studies Program, SSP, at the time, the summer session program. It was a formational experience for me, and it opened my eyes to a lot of possibilities. I was employed with a mega corporation, McDonnell Douglas, which has since merged in a way with Boeing, which I'm sure they're enterprises you know. But after some time, I was sort of emboldened to take the step to start an enterprise. So it was me, and one of the important lessons, choose your partners very carefully. Another ISU alum who started the company 13 years ago. That company's Odyssey Space Research. I love human spaceflight. I was in Houston, Texas. I'm Canadian by birth. I moved there specifically to be part of the human spaceflight community. And we started the company 13 years ago with an idea to help do things more commercially. And our expertise at the time lay in what's called guidance, navigation, control. You already or will be learning about that in detail. So it's call it the smarts that make the spacecraft fly. And at the time, we were doing rendezvous proximity operations. So it's the bringing together of spacecraft in space. And we thought there was a commercial possibility there. And it turned out that the timing was great. If you know the space station story, the space station needs a lot of logistical supplies. It started with government suppliers, including, quite frankly, the space shuttle, which was people, logistics, assembly. But then they had partnership spacecraft from Europe and Japan, so clearly the international part and even the intercultural experience with ISU coming into play. And then NASA decided that with the retirement of the space shuttle, they needed commercial entities to take the leap to start delivering logistical support for a space station and eventually crew. So our company, two of us started it with some experience in that area. We helped NASA successfully get ATV and HTV, the European and Japanese spacecraft, integrated with space station. And then the decision point came. We were supporting NASA. We said, look, you're doing this commercial thing. Do you want us to work with the enterprises or do you want us to work with you? And they have to be careful about, call it, giving advice. But the answer was basically they'd rather design quality in than inspect it in. So we were teamed with essentially virtually every enterprise that was trying to compete for the delivery of logistical supplies to space station. And so now we're very fortunate. We've built on that base, and we count as our customers SpaceX, Orbital ATK, Lockheed Martin, NASA, and then a collection of other enterprises. And we went from 2 people in 2003 to about 100 today. And we're based principally still in Houston with operations in Denver. And it's been a very exciting ride. We're totally privileged to be a part of it. And that's my story.
Thank you, Brian. Yonathan, please.
Thank you, Chris, and thank you, ISU, for inviting me. My name is Yonathan Winetraub. I'm a graduate of SSP09, and I see that a lot of students in the audience, so I gotta apologize. I'm gonna use the same jokes from our morning session. Please be courteous and laugh again. That will be much appreciated. Thank you. So, up until today, basically only superpowers have soft landed on the moon. United States, Soviet Union, and recently China did so. And we thought, why wasn't it time for a change, time to change that? We were 3 friends sitting in a bar, and as our alcohol levels rose in that day, we were more and more determined to go ahead and start a robotic mission off of Israel to land an unmanned spacecraft on the moon. And as it turned out, Google Lunar X Prize is prizing exactly that, landing a robotic mission on the moon, and we set off and registered for the competition. But very early on, actually, from the very first bar date, we thought maybe we can do something actually more than just landing on the moon. Maybe we can provide source for inspiration for kids. Because kids today in Israel and also around the world are losing interest in science, engineering, technology, and math. And the reason is it's not cool, right? Science is hard, and sometimes it's very hard for kids to understand why are they doing this. Everybody wants to be a rock star, and everybody wants to be celebrity. And as I mentioned this morning, I do watch The Real Housewives, and I enjoy it. You know, what can I say? But we also need the engineers and the scientists to go ahead and move the society forward, and converting them from rock stars to rocket scientists. And we already reach over 250,000 students, most of them are in Israel, and we are hoping to inspire them to have careers in space. The first prize of the competition, by the way, of Google Lunar X Prize is $20 million, which we're going to donate to promoting science and education for science for kids. So we're doing this purely for the impact. And we were one of the last teams to register for the competition, but now we're in the lead position. We were the first team to actually announce a launch contract, and our hope is to launch next year. and the spaceship is actually being built right now. So that was a really exciting moment for me and my friends to go from 3 guys in a bar to a company that actually, or organization that actually is actually building a spaceship that you can actually see. They don't allow me, I cannot touch it though. The engineers there said it's a big no-no after a mishap that we don't talk about anymore. But we can actually see that spaceship being built. I started off before that I have a master's in electrical engineering, and I've been to ISU, which actually sparked my interest in Google Lunar X Prize.
Thank you, Yonathan. Meidad, up on the screen. Tell us where you're joining us from too, please.
Hi. Hello, everybody. Chris, thank you very much for inviting me to this panel. It's always a pleasure to try to find fellow space geeks and talk about stuff. So currently I'm in Aalborg, Denmark, in the operating center of Sky and Space Global. This is the recent company I'm involved in. We just launched our first 3 nanosatellites called 3 Diamonds. And our company will disrupt the narrowband satellite phone communication. And we aim to provide 24/7 narrowband services for the equatorial region, for the tropical region, in which currently 2.5 billion people cannot afford any kind of communication, and they are off the grid. So we're about to better the life of hopefully 2.5 billion people. Singularity University. The goal is 1 billion people in 10 years. So we are about to disrupt 2.5 billion lives in 3 years. So in 2020, this is our 2020 vision. The full constellation will be up and running. A bit about myself. I started off in the space industry 22 years ago. I just celebrated my 22nd anniversary in the space industry. Started off as a satellite operator, and then later on was system engineer and chief system engineer for several communication satellites, nano satellites, and Earth observation satellites. So I've been around. And since 2010, I have an independent company. We started off together with Maya, my wife, which is also an ISU alumni, to promote civilian space industry, first in Israel and then through nanosatellites in Europe and in the world. It's been such a pleasure to be part of the new space industry. Even seeing high school kids being entrepreneurs themselves, and Yonathan is a great example. When we first met, he was a high school kid, part of the Duchifat 1 team, the first Israeli nanosatellite that was launched 3 years ago and was built by high school kids in Herzliya. And ever since, I think that we came up to a point that we're about to change the space industry, and I'm sure that we're going to talk about that. And I'm here to tell you a bit about my personal experience, all the things that entrepreneurs will encounter during their careers. And I will start off and say that if you plan to sleep a lot, forget it. Sleep is for the weak.
Thank you, Meidad. And now also joining us last, but by certainly no means least, is Adil Jafry. Adil, are you there?
Yes, can you hear me?
We can hear you, we can see you. So Adil, please tell us about yourself, your company, and tell us where you are too.
Great, thank you very much, Chris. First of all, very privileged to be back on a panel with ISU, my alma mater, class of 2010. So thank you for having me there. I'm logging in from Houston, Texas. We just celebrated a wonderful Independence Day yesterday over here. I'm missing you quite a bit, Chris, as well. So just very briefly, my background, actually come not from space background per se until I joined the ISU community through the master's program. I entered space through Google Lunar X Prize competition in 2007-8 timeframe. Realized very quickly I did not know much about space per se. I knew a little bit about finance, having been an investment banker and an entrepreneur in the area of energy. And then ISU pretty much changed my life. I ended up coming for the one-year master's program, picked up some great skills, ended up working in small satellite commercialization at NASA Ames Research Center, where I made some great friends, got to know my future board members and investors and partners. And then subsequently, 2011-12 timeframe, launched Chanda Space Technologies, and Chanda means moon in Sanskrit. We are a small startup based out of Houston, looking at space situation awareness, and our first mission is expected to fly towards the end of next year in 2018. So with that, I'll hold back my remarks for now, and I'll participate into the Q&A as we proceed.
Thank you, Adil. Well, ladies and gentlemen, you've got some fantastic people spread around the world, which reflects the global industry, the global nature of our industry. And just a couple of quick sort of frames before we get into the questions. One is entrepreneurs in space. You know, you think governments in space. Give you an idea. Last year, we pulled out some figures. The Space Foundation, last year, the global space satellite industry was worth about $325 billion, right? And Hollywood pulled in about $14 billion last year. But if you go down the street and say to anyone, who's Angelina Jolie, who's Brad Pitt, they'll know. You'll say, well, who's, name a space company, and they'll probably look quite strangely at you. And yet, every single one of you today have used space. I know you've talked about this a lot, but it's a lot to do with the entrepreneurs driving this new part of the industry. I mean, the satellite communications industry reaches into that $4.3 trillion communications industry. The phones that you use are driven by space. Now, Goldman Sachs has done a recent report, came out April 4th this year. On average, up to date, just in the entrepreneurial side of space, over $13.3 billion. Almost 2/3 of NASA's entire budget has been invested in entrepreneurship. It's changing everything that we do. It's not only the realm of governments anymore. But it takes very special people to get involved and do this. And one of the first questions I wanted to put to the panel is, why did you do it? What is it? Becoming an entrepreneur. But, why? Why did you become an entrepreneur? It's not something that everyone chooses to do. And, and what led you to that decision? Please, anyone, free fall, go for it.
Okay, so I'm sure every story is unique. So mine's kind of funny. So I was a Canadian citizen working for a pretty big company under a special visa status in the United States, and I think for people around the world who have tried to move in these circles elsewhere, it might sound familiar. And I ended up going to a small company because I wanted a change from that giant company. And that small company was acquired by a big company, and then it was going to be acquired by an even bigger company with a lot of restrictive rules. And I said, hey, I'm Canadian. Can I work for this company after it's fully formed? And they said no. And I said, well, what if I already have NASA clearances and stuff like that? And they said no. And it's sort of this series of questions where I was trying to find an angle. And so I call myself the reluctant entrepreneur. As an engineer by background, I looked at the problem in a system engineering sense, and I said, what are my options? What are the solutions? And starting a company turned out to be the best solution. And so while reluctant may be an exaggeration, it has turned out quite okay.
I'll be a little politician here and change the question a little bit. You ask, why did you do it? And my interpretation of it would be, why Space IL, or why do you do that? And I think that the magic happens when you're doing something that is both impactful or you have passion about, and it also really cool. In this area where you have impactful and cool, I think this is where the spark goes. And I knew that I wanted to impact kids and inspire them to do go and pursue careers in science, engineering, and math, and technology, and be engineers. But I didn't know if Space IL would be cool. And the first thing we did back then was, you know, trying to tell some friends and family and people that I know about, yeah, we have this idea, we thought about starting Space IL. And the reactions that I got are either, yeah, sure, okay, fine, another crazy idea, and other people said, wow, that's really cool. And as the more I got more feedback on that, I thought, wow, maybe Space IL is going to be something really cool. And then it hit me. Then you see, okay, you have something that you think is impactful for you and you're passionate about, and also other people think is very cool. And this is why I decided, you know what, I'm going to jump right through this and go ahead and do it.
Very cool. Gentlemen, online, any comments?
Adil, go ahead.
Okay, well, sure. So my entry into entrepreneurship was not circumstantial. I come from a background in terms of my family from different industries and entrepreneurship, and I was in energy prior to this. The reason why space particularly is exciting, in my opinion, is because of the impact. You know, clearly you are working with some of the brightest people in the world, and what you see is concepts that are very imaginative, and everyone wants to really change the world for the good. And so I think that's the excitement of it more than anything else. The fact that you can come from a background in finance and other industries and parlay that experience into bringing something new to space, perhaps, which is a sustainable commercial outlook, that's got its own allure as well. So I'm in it for the ride, and I think the challenge, as well as being able to apply some of my former skills in this industry.
Very cool. Well, and you know, I mean, Meidad, 1 second or two. I mean, so you both touched on the difference about being in the space industry, because you could be entrepreneurs in any industry. So why space? I mean, I think you touched on that, Yonathan and Adil. Meidad, why space for you?
Okay, so first of all, let me answer the question about why I became an entrepreneur, and I think it's a good chance for me to thank each and every one of my former managers that constantly said no to me. I became an entrepreneur because people told me no, and I realized at one point that I had to do it myself. I just had to do it. Otherwise, I'll be restless, and I had to get it out of my system. So thank you very much to everyone that said no to me in the past, and in the future also. Why space? Actually, by chance. I almost was a professional football player, or soccer, and just saw an ad. At that time, I was a student at Tel Aviv University, and that ad led me to be one of the first Israeli communication satellite operators, Amos satellite, and it was like a flu. I got infected. Space is a great manifestation for multi-purpose and multidiscipline systems. And being a curious person, the fact that space involves all aspects of science and engineering, for me was the jackpot. For me it was tackling on a daily basis challenges that had to keep me on my toes, and that was such a satisfying experience that I decided that this would be my career.
Very cool, thank you. And gentlemen, well, go ahead.
You asked why space, and I think that every time we make really cool technology, really inspired technology, as something of everyday, society changes. Okay, so every time an incredible technology becomes something that is of everyday, society changes, and we've seen that many times in the past. People have dreamed about flying for thousands of years, wrote poems about it, tried to. A lot of people got killed over this. And all of a sudden, incredible thing happened. People were actually able to go and fly. That wasn't not so long ago. But the story of Wright brothers, a lot of people say it's a story of about entrepreneurship, about how do you go and fly in the air. But one thing that did happen as a result is we got global economy, and the world has become a smaller place. And I think we cannot imagine anymore a time where airplanes were not a thing. But this was an incredible technology not so long ago. And I think space is in the same situation flight was in the beginning. You can fly today. You could have flown back then. You can go to space today. It costs a lot of money to go to space. And it's not an everyday thing. But once we make it a thing of every day, once you can buy a ticket and go to space, or you can build your satellite in your backyard, and so on and so forth, I think it would change society forever. We don't know exactly how it would change society forever. A lot of people say about mining, about tourism in space, which I think will be real things at someday. But in the early days of aviation, people thought, oh, that's so cool. We have airplanes. We can fly mail across the country. And actually, if you look at the history, the first thing that American Airlines flew was mail, not passengers. We still fly mail today, but we know that this is not the real thing. This is not the real purpose of aviation. And I think in the same way, we still don't know what is the real purpose, what is the real utility of having space industry, which you can actually do stuff for quite cheaply. And I think it's about time that we figure it out.
So I'm suffering from OLD. So I'm old enough to have watched, my parents made me watch people land on the moon. And from that moment on, I was 4 years old. I wanted to be involved. It's what I wanted to do. You know, when I moved to Houston, it was interesting. It was 1989. It was the 20th anniversary of the Apollo lunar landing, and here we are coming up soon on the 50th. And you know, for the 20th anniversary, they assembled the crew of Apollo 11 together again, and I got to, you know, say hello to the crew, and I told Neil Armstrong I wanted to follow in his footsteps. Ever since then, I've wanted to do it. I mean, and it's you know, space is cool. It is still on the cusp. There is lots of opportunity, and the opportunity isn't defined. And so I'm again old. Things like ISU, you know, just came online when I was maturing as a professional. And you know, these opportunities are fantastic. They open the door. And so for me, I was passionate from when I was 4, suffering, you know, the jokes, you know, I want to be an astronaut from everyone. But I did know I wanted to be part of it, even if it wasn't going to be an astronaut. And so I followed that path. And like I said, I'm a reluctant entrepreneur, but my heart is in it, and I'm passionate about it. And if your heart is in it and you're passionate about it, and as I think Meidad said, you don't really value sleep that much, you can do a lot.
Well, before we open it, one last question for the panel before we open it up. So get your questions ready, please. And that really has been, you know, well, you said it, sleep and everything else. But what has been the most surprising thing that you've found being an entrepreneur? Something you completely didn't expect.
All right. So I think one of the things that was really stunning to me was that in today's economy, and there are a lot of people that are talking about this, about the singularity and so on and so forth. But for me, it came to realize as disruption today is really, really cheap. Things you can do for large budgets 10, 15, 20 years ago are becoming extremely affordable today. And I think this is why it makes it Space IL possible, and Meidad was talking about their satellites, right? If they were building the satellites, correct me if I'm wrong, Meidad, 10 years ago, 15 years ago, it would be like 5 times more of the budget or 10 times more?
Try 100.
100, okay. I was sorry. But today, disruption is becoming really cheap. And I think this causes a lot of opportunities because you can actually, a person can go and disrupt this industry. It's no longer the purview of governments or extremely big bodies. You can actually do this. And we go ahead and tell that to kids. We tell them, you know, find the moonshot within you. You know, decide whatever you want to do, and today's economics, you don't say, oh, little me, I cannot do this. You know, the measure of your sleeve, how long is your sleeve is no longer measure of how far your arms can reach. And I think this is a really exciting thing to know, and it took at least me a long time to understand.
Gentlemen, any other comments?
I can go next if you wish. So I think my sense is that one thing that surprised me was just the good faith and well-meaning people who would come forward to help and support you if you were trying to do something exciting and interesting. Just the sheer fact that you were trying to do something for the first time alone has tremendous value. The fact that you would put some thought into pulling together the concept, making it more sustainable, and bringing it within the fold of what would be considered high impact. I think that automatically attracts a following, and I think this community has a lot of great people, which was not just surprising, but I think it certainly helped me out a lot as well.
Well, ladies and gentlemen. Oh, go ahead, Meidad, please. Meidad.
I want to continue the line that Adil mentioned. Again, this is what surprised me, the fact that in the space industry, I learned that you have no competitors, only partners and future partners. It's a small community, and the amount of support that companies give each other constantly amaze me. Take, for example, the CubeSat shop. The CubeSat shop is not something that you will ever see in any other industry. One can never imagine Apple selling Samsung phones on their website. In the space industry, it happens. And the fact that so many positive individuals are involved in this industry is a miracle. And hopefully, everybody in the audience will be part of this miracle also.
Absolutely. It's a very special industry, as Meidad pointed out. I mean, you've got people from all around the world. They all compete but cooperate. It's the most difficult thing human beings have ever done. And yet, at the heart of this, you find ISU students. This is why we do the Entrepreneurs Panel. Everyone has a link. Everyone has a connection. And so many of these new companies are being formed by ISU students. So to the students in the audience tonight, I mean, think about entrepreneurship. It's an incredible path. And you would be amazed at how many of your fellow alumni have followed that path. Now, any questions from the audience? Oh. Gentlemen here on the yes, sir, go ahead. And if you could say who you are as well, and yeah, go for it.
Okay. Hi, thank you so much for being here and also calling in. So my name is Kasper, I'm from Poland, but I was lucky enough to study in the States for a while. Also had some visa issues. My background is communications and business academically, and then I worked as an entrepreneur from the start in communications, mobile payments, then e-commerce, and you know, I know I speak for many of us here. It's been like a ongoing narrative throughout ISU that many of us entrepreneurs who never had experience in the space industry, we would like to sort of find out as best as we can throughout this program to what extent we are viable candidates to get into the industry. So my question would be to you, to everyone actually, perhaps you could give 1 or 2 points without sugarcoating it. To what extent, what are the challenges that face people from outside the industry, particularly entrepreneurs, young entrepreneurs? What are the challenges and how difficult is it for you to acquire the skill set and the knowledge to be able to successfully run a company in the space industry? Thank you.
So I'll try to answer that first. So aside from there are logistical challenges, but at the end of the day, I had engineering training. I had a bachelor's degree, master's degree in engineering, and a master's degree in science. I had no business training, none. So I did my research, which again, I think now, today, especially in relation to space, there are a lot more resources out there, and there's things like ISU. ISU really was an eye-opener, and it helped me a lot. I used the network for sure to capitalize on getting information. There were two questions. Well, there's only really two questions that I'll say are what I learned were the discriminators in the probability of success. There are no guarantees, of course. And they were, number one, are you willing to do what's required? Are you willing to put in the effort? And I don't mean, break the law and rob a bank. I mean, are you willing to really, like the lack of sleep thing is a half joke, but because you're always on call, you have to be ready to do the work. The second one, very importantly, and I'm sure, can you convince someone, preferably not someone so close to you, but arguably that counts, to give you money for your idea? Can you convince someone objectively that what you are proposing, both the concept, the product, the service, and you, is that something someone's willing to invest in? If you can get the affirmative on both those questions, your probability goes way up.
I think the best thing that would set entrepreneurs apart is the ability to roll with the punches. Because a lot of times you're going to get negative answers. And it's really hard to pitch to someone and then you have your homework and you've done everything well, and then they go and say, no, it's not going to work for me, I don't want it. And sometimes you ask yourself, well, maybe they're right. Maybe I am wasting my time. Maybe I shouldn't be doing this. And I think the perseverance, the ability to say, okay, I just got to know it's part of the process. I need to make my homework, try again and again and again, and keep getting those punches and not giving up. I think that's what's really critical in this industry, because there's a lot of skepticism in this industry. There's a lot of conservatism in this industry, especially for people that coming from the outside. But if you keep on doing your homework and getting the no's and not taking that personally, I think that's really critical. Sometimes you'll get a no from physics. We had it many times in our spacecraft designs. We designed a spacecraft that was really cool. It was the size of a Coca-Cola bottle, and we thought we're going to get with the moon with that. And then we did a simulation and got a punch in the face and said, nope, you need more fuel. So we said, okay, second time around it would work. First time never works. So we built another design, and we ran with that for a couple of years until physics knocked on our door again and said, no, that's not going to work. And we're actually in a third design right now. So I think the ability to not give up and continue doing this is really critical, and especially in this business where the cycles are so long. It's not like you're doing an app and in a month you know if it's working or not. And I think it's critical that you follow that.
Gentlemen, before I chip in, anything? Adil, Meidad?
Sure. I'll just add that I think that was great coverage that the gentleman on the podium provided, but I would just add that in general the credibility gap is something you want to close in on as an entrepreneur. You want to make sure that you have the ecosystem around you to support your vision and strategy and have a great plan as well. The other one is being able to build relationships and alliances, and I think that's important because as you continue to retire risks and have that ecosystem to support your vision, you will start seeing funding emerge, you'll start seeing business emerge, and then you need great governance. So all around, I think it's about credibility in the end, and then closing and retiring the risks.
Absolutely, and I think coming to ISU is a huge step. You now have an incredible network. And as these gentlemen have said, if you don't ask, you don't get. You need to put those people around you, those advisors. You need to ask the right questions. And sometimes when someone says no, it's okay to say, why not? And they'll tell you, most likely, why not. And the only other thing I'd add to that is, back to the old Adam Smith. It's demand pull versus technology push. And that's something that, our company is now, Mansat, we do Spectrum, of course. We're now the world's largest commercial provider. Back when we started, we were the only commercial provider. We still compete against governments. And we then see a lot of projects come through, and it's fascinating. And the projects that we look at and the projects that we do investing in, the first question we ask them is, are you meeting a demand? or do you have a really cool technology that you're just trying to find a use for? And that's a big thing in the space industry because it's still a business. But if you can leverage your ISU connections and you can use that network, wow, you have an advantage that some of the other major universities around the world, they're fantastic places, don't get me wrong. But when you add ISU to that equation, you're like the one-eyed man in the kingdom of the blind. Because you can see this interdisciplinary thing. You can have these incredible people around you. And you get to see space like no others do. And that's why you find a lot of entrepreneurs coming from ISU, I think, and succeeding. I hope.
I'd like to follow up on what Adil said, if I could, for 30 seconds. The relationship part, he's 100% right. I cannot overemphasize the relationships, and sort of philosophically, it's a long path. It can be. You're going to meet a lot of people along the way, including everyone that's here. My philosophy is everything you do matters. Every encounter matters. And I cannot tell you how many times what you might categorize as, and I mean it in quotes, a meaningless encounter, somewhere, 3 years later turns out to be a critical relationship building step to getting to the next level. And it's happened an unbelievable number of times. And the more it happens, the more it will happen. It's a self-supporting cycle.
Next question. Oh, you're welcome. Gentlemen, you're just down.
Meidad, shortly add something? I strongly believe in karma. So my advice to anyone who wants to be an entrepreneur in the space industry is go and help someone to promote their dream. You will learn a lot from just working with the other guys or the other team to reach their goals. And then when you'll be ready, you'll have a lot of experience, and you will not start from zero. You will start from a very good position. And as I mentioned in the beginning, the fact that you help someone else means that you'll get the help that you need when the time will come.
Very correct. Absolutely. Don't forget that. When your fellow students come knocking on the door saying, please help me with this, help. It always works. Next question.
Yeah, my name is Chance. I'm from the United States. In terms of kind of asking more specific directive question in running the business and getting into the thick of it, how do you all handle the challenge, with the space projects themselves? They're very intense, very heavy overhead oriented. How do you all tackle that challenge, and maybe speak on kind of your approach in balancing that with still trying to get the business there?
Jens, you mind if I jump in on that one? Delegate. The number one rule of successful management, no matter what industry, is surround yourselves with amazingly incredible and talented people and delegate. If you walk in that room and you're the smartest person in that room, you're in trouble, right? Find amazing people, surround yourself, set clear goals, let them know how to be successful, set clear expectations, find experts in their fields, and delegate. Because you can't tackle every single thing. You've got to focus on your element of the business. And is that fair enough, gents?
I want to offer a slightly different answer.
This is why we're doing this?
So it depends on the model. So our model, we were two guys that started a company. We literally had to do everything. There wasn't funding for overhead. But that turned out to be incredibly valuable, because when we did grow to the point where we could surround ourselves with people who could arguably do it better, but certainly, very importantly, instead of us, we understood if it was accounting, if it was finance, if it was fundraising, if it was human resources, if it was anything, we at least had the foundational knowledge of every working part. And that turned out to be an invaluable, so I never took business training, so maybe, and I don't really know, if the business training will offer you that kind of practical, apprenticeship style stuff, but that was invaluable for us. So it was sort of a do everything, and I would argue one more point, which is, I've interviewed hundreds of people to work with. And people always ask me, what's the job description? And yes, there are parameters for the specific task. But fundamentally, in a small business, do what needs doing. That is the job description.
When I was in ISU SSP in 2009, I think we had a panel like this. And the advice that I heard in that panel were a little blurry. And I learned over time that delegation is really important. But if you're starting off, you don't really understand what it means. So I would say start. If you don't know, start. Figure it out as you go. Remember someone said about something about delegation and about hiring smart people and about hiring people saying the job done. Put it in the back of your head, but just start. That's the important part.
Adil, Meidad, anything to add?
Sure. So I'll just add to Chance's question regarding the capital intensity within the business and the project management part of it. I would just say that a lot of it also depends upon the source of the capital. So if you have venture capitalists backing you versus a more private equity source or a government-backed project, you might have different approaches there. I just wanted to sort of finesse that a little bit with that comment.
And then actually Meidad, and maybe the question, which is not on the list I sent you, because this is coming out of the questions here. Ooh, scary moment. How did you all get funded? And how are you funding your present companies? Maybe that's a good question to answer.
You asked me or Meidad?
Well, Meidad first. No, Meidad,
Okay.
Because Meidad, I know you did something quite fantastic, so maybe this is...
Sky and Space Global is kind of a background pyramid, reverse pyramid kind of company, because a startup starts with small seed money, and then you get round A, round B, round C, you get a product, hopefully 5-6 years in the future you get IPO, and you become a public company. Well, we started off as a public company. We are a listed company in the Australian Stock Exchange. Search the ticker SAS, wink wink, nudge nudge. We started off with an idea. We searched for funding. We heard a lot of no's, and then suddenly this group of Australian businessmen came to us and said, would you like to RTO to the ASX? And we thought that it's not very polite to curse after 5 minutes, because we didn't know what RTO stands for or what ASX is, but we learned. And after a process of about 6 months, we decided to do that. And just to give you an idea of what we are talking about, we are talking about more than 6,000 shareholders, more than 6,000 people currently fully involved in new space industry, because they are so much in the details and they know everything about the satellites and launches and our future plans. So it was very, very exciting for us to become a public company from day one. And I think it's a very good demonstration of how a new space can really, really attract everybody. And imagination regarding space industry and space companies bring people from all over the globe to participate. So I know it's a unique story, but I think that others can also follow.
No, it's a very unique story. I mean, you pretty much started out as a publicly listed company, and it's fantastic. And that's a really important point that Meidad makes. I mean, entrepreneurs form companies, but those companies are funded by people who draw their income from this. So you support shareholders, you support widows and orphans, you create jobs, you create whole economic sectors. And it's a fantastic thing, especially in space.
So our first real funding story was, I think I wouldn't dream about that. It was just too good to be true. We were having a 7-minute time slot in a conference, and we were very fortunate to get that 7-minute time slot. And we prepared for that 7 minutes for I think for a week or so, just rehearsing it again and again and again. The three of us, how are we going to move the slides around? Is the animation going to work? And so on and so forth. And we went on stage and we gave those 7 minutes. I recently found that this YouTube video is actually online, so we have those 7 minutes recorded somewhere. And when we went off stage pitching, the Space IL thing, a really nice guy came up to us and said, "Do you have any money?" And we said, "Nope, we just get it started, we're just getting off the ground, we want to do this, we don't have any money." And we were like students at the time. I think I was 23 or 24. And then that guy said, "Come to my office, I'll give you $100,000. And that guy is Morris Khan, and he's currently the chairman of Space IL, donated a lot more money since. And I gotta be honest, I'd never seen a $100,000 check before that. It has a lot of zeros, and it was really exciting. But sometimes you don't know where your funding is going to come from. One thing I did learn was that I encourage you to think big, because if you think big, either people are going to like your idea or not going to like your idea. You're not wasting your time on people that say, "Oh, give me a little more information and then I'll call you back." And I'm sure you guys heard it, I'll have a little more information, then I'll decide and I'll think about it. But if you have an idea which is crazy enough, is far out enough, and you can actually make it happen, or you think you can make it happen, then people will either like it or will not like it, and you can move forward from that. And I think that was really critical in doing this. And I think ISU was founded on this basis, right? 3 guys thinking they can found a university. Who would, this is crazy idea, it's far out there. And look at us today, right? 30 years later, the university still runs very successfully.
So I think, so our story, I don't know if conventional is the right word, but I did a few stupid things when we started the company, or maybe more than a few. But it's sort of I had gotten, so they list these number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 stressful events in your lifetime. So I got married, moved, had a kid, quit my job, started a company in about 1.5 years. I don't recommend that.
But Brian's actually about 20.
But I've started a few other companies as a minor partner, so the funding thing is different. But for Odyssey, it was write a business plan, which I had never written before, approach potential investors, actually principally the bank. We managed to convince them, but not for everything. I didn't get a paycheck for. That's another. I don't know about your story.
No paycheck.
I didn't get a paycheck for a very long time, and so in addition to some seed money, it was an era when you could get a credit card quite easily, with a pretty high maximum and no interest. So we maxed out no small number of credit cards, but in the end, you have to believe in yourself. You have to believe in what you're doing, and you have to persevere. And we did, and it's been a great ride. It's not all gravy. It's not all what you would characterize as fun, but it's all learning and it's all motivational. And if you persevere, you can succeed.
Actually, how long was it till you guys got a first paycheck?
I think more than 6 months.
Yeah, more than 6 months.
It was 2 years for me.
Wow.
Yeah, everyone else got paid, but 2 years.
Yeah, that's the other thing. Everyone else did get paid.
Yeah.
We never ever missed a payroll.
Meidad, how about you?
Yeah, 2 years sounds like a right number.
Yeah. Adil?
Yeah, thereabouts. I think going back to your question, I think the angel rounds are what sustained us early on, and we are now on to our institutional capital. So that's been a whole eye-opener for us as well in terms of the capital, attachments and requirements and things like that. So again, having a great governance environment within the company from early on is very helpful. And again, getting ISU folks involved early on is very, very helpful as well.
Absolutely. And Adil's making a really good point there, by the way, is that you're now coming out as entrepreneurs in an environment that lets entrepreneurs thrive. I mean, what did we just mention? We just mentioned angel, institutional, we mentioned all sorts of different ways of funding that were just not there 10, 20 years ago. So when you say you want to be an entrepreneur now, you have all of these incredible options, even rolling through on an IPO, reverse IPO. I mean, it's incredible stuff. So the tools are there. It's just having the vision to go off and grasp it and do it. Next question. Gentleman just there, yes.
Hello, my name is Miles. I'm from the United States. So what are the advantages or disadvantages between promoting your company as a space company rather than just being a company that happens to have hardware operating in space?
Depends on what your customer wants to hear, I imagine.
Whatever works,
Yeah.
So for example, like many telecoms companies have a lot of satellites, but they don't pitch themselves as space companies, whereas like Planet Labs is ultimately just selling imaging data, but they're definitely identify as a space company.
Yeah, no, actually, no, I mean, I work in the satellite communications industry, and I think, every week we launch and operate spacecraft into space that make money. And we love it. People come talk to us about this commercial space revolution, and we're like, we know, we've been doing it for like 30 years. But space has matured there to become a part of the telecoms offering. So even though we're in space and we're satellite guys and gals, we sometimes look at that and go, oh yeah, oh gosh, you have to pinch ourselves. Yeah, we are a space company. And that new space revolution is really helping us redefine ourselves. Because what we're realizing is we're realizing we have a lot to offer all of these other companies coming up through who are going through the same lessons learned that we went through as satellite communications companies. How do you buy a rocket? How do you finance a satellite? How do you get a return on this? How do you enter markets? And that's tremendous. I mean, and what Meidad's doing as well. I mean, he is a satellite communications company, broadband. So Meidad, are you a satellite communications company or are you a broadband company? I mean, how do you see yourselves?
Well, let's face it, space is sexy. So just add space to anything you do, and it becomes cooler. And for me, yes, we are a communication company. We are satellite owners, we are operators, whatever you want to call it. But we are a space company, per se.
I'd say the space part, if you will, is part of my, or I sense it as part of my personal DNA. So we are a space company, we are marketed as a space company, we do space technology, space engineering, space research. So that's what we do. And actually, somewhat surprisingly, aside from the sexy factor, which is perhaps why we're all here today, we're all sexy, I'm going somewhere. What's happened over time is that in terms of acquiring customers and pursuing business, that's an art in and of itself, aside from selling, if you will, the very first thing you do. But now, and you asked earlier, what's the biggest surprise? So the biggest surprise is we get called now. We don't have to pursue every opportunity. People are now coming to us. So we've built a reputation. We're on the radar, so to speak, pun intended. And we have more opportunities now than, quite frankly, we can accommodate.
And you know what's interesting when you look at the panelists? We have people who work primarily in human spaceflight, people opening up new markets on the moon, people disrupting huge markets in satellite broadband, and people creating new markets with Adil as well in space situational awareness, whole new markets. And you can do anything you want. We haven't even talked about biotech or nanotech on space station or anything. You've got so many opportunities and the costs are so much lower than they used to be. Now, I know we're getting close on time, and so I was going to say maybe one or two last questions. And there's a huge spotlight here, by the way, as you can tell. So we can't really see much beyond that. So I know there's one, and then two, and then if there's anyone at the back who really wants a question, please come up, because I can't really see you. So maybe this gentleman over here, and then we'll do do there, and then we'll go back. Thank you. Oh, microphone up here, please. Thank you.
So my name is Marcel from Germany. When I was 18 years old, I started up my own little company. It never lifted off because I encountered like a huge challenge, which was copyright infringement. And as an 18-year-old, you don't have the money to pay a lawyer. So what is the biggest challenge you had to overcome except the funding issues?
Good question. By the way, we've all had companies that we've been involved with that haven't worked too. We just don't tell you about them. Gentlemen, biggest challenge.
I think the biggest challenge is actually convincing people that actually it can be done. Because there's a lot of skepticism in the beginning, and you need to overturn that. So I would imagine the hardest part is convincing people that this is real and you can actually make it happen. And you sometimes you need the help of people that are a lot more experienced than you. For example, we brought a professional CEO, Ron Privman, to run Space.il, and he is the one that is pushing this company or organization forward to make the spaceship actually launch and go to space. But I would say making people believe that this is possible.
Gentlemen?
I want to say it's very hard to boil it down, distill it down to just one challenge, besides money. Money is the big challenge because it's obviously enabling. So I'll say personally, so, there was a question earlier about, what's the important things, and it was that delegation, I think, was the answer, and my experience was a little bit different. I ended up, the hardest thing for me personally, ultimately, was to delegate, and to delegate, I mean, freely. But I did it because I had to. The lack of sleep can only go so far. You've got to say no, or you've got to figure out how to delegate. And so while I admit, just like I was a reluctant entrepreneur, I was a reluctant delegator, once I did it, it was enormously liberating. And now I'm ready to do nothing. I'm ready to just let everybody do everything.
Gentlemen, Adil, Meidad, biggest challenge outside of money?
Well, I think my personal biggest challenge was, and still is, ego. You have to check ego outside the door when working hard with people that you want to consider your friends. You want to make them your friends. You want to surround yourself with people that really care about each other, and the only way to do that is without ego that sometimes cause you to take wrong decisions at the worst time ever. So if you can cope with that, you'll succeed.
Adil?
I would tend to agree. I think y'all captured it well. Most of the issues and the biggest challenges, particularly in a startup in commercial space, are, I would say, human-oriented. And so essentially building that team, being able to work with the team of very intensely bright visionaries and have a successful project on your hand and do it inside of budget, on schedule, that's the biggest challenge, in my opinion, in the space.
Absolutely. I mean, that's it. Never give up on your vision. Sometimes everyone else is wrong and you are right. And you've just got to find that within yourself to keep pushing through. And don't forget, misery loves company. So all those people who don't do it, they love trying to pull you back. And you've just got to keep focusing and make it happen and follow that through. Definitely. There was a question over here. Yes, please. We'll get a microphone for you.
Hi, I'm Conor from here in Cork. It's a quick question. What is the biggest technical challenges that your businesses face, and is there a venture capital appetite to go solve that?
All right, the biggest challenges that our businesses face, and is there a venture capital appetite? Yeah. Absolutely. Gentlemen, yeah, we never went the VC route at MadSats. We were fortunate that way. So how about you guys?
We didn't go the VC route either.
Well, what is the biggest challenge?
I can.
And is there an appetite to go solve it?
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay.
Go ahead, Adil.
So, I mean, just to take a quick stab at it. I think it depends upon how long it might take you to solve the problem that you're trying to solve. And so venture capital in general has a timeline associated with it. If you can solve the problem in 18 to 36 months, if you can find the right market, if you can bring the product to market at a in the foreseeable future, the deal will be priced accordingly from the VC point of view.
That's it. It's a good point too. The VC guys will always have their own timetable. And as long as you can fit within that timetable, otherwise they start driving the car for you, which can be interesting sometimes. Well, you don't. Yes.
You asked about the greatest technical challenge. I think the greatest technical challenge that we faced was how can you make the spaceship affordable? Because if you want to land on the moon and you give NASA $1 billion, they will do it for you, no problem. But I don't know how many of you in the audience have $1 billion to spend on that. Probably not a lot. So the question was, how can you make it cheap and affordable so that a small company or a small organization or a small country can put a satellite on the moon? And that's a quite tricky question. I can tell you that one of the key factors was we needed to shrink everything, to make everything smaller and smaller, because as you make the satellite smaller, costs go down. But it's, in theory, it's very nice. In practice, you still need to find parts and develop a technology that actually makes it small. But I'm really happy that we were able to do that.
And you know, I don't know if it's not a technical challenge, but finding the right people is really hard. Finding those technical skills that you need is increasingly hard out there in the world, especially with all the other tech industries. You know, you go try and find a software engineer, and you're up against Google to try and get them. And that's really hard, finding the right people. That's why ISU is great, because it's a natural resource to dip into, which is one of the reasons it was founded, I think. So I think we have one last question, because I know we were asked to finish at about 10 past
Chris.
As well.
Chris is the one here.
It's like a voice from the world, but from us, it's like, it's like, wow, who was that? That's fantastic.
Step up.
Thank you.
There you go.
My name's Niall Conway. I'm setting up a company in the e-learning field. It's called Spatial Outlook, and it's focused on geospatial technology. It's based on, I worked in oil and gas in Australia doing digital mapping. They use geospatial technology a lot. So basically my question is, do you think that the real opportunity for the space industry is in Earth observation? And if so, do we have the actual, there's a saying that we're gathering all of this data, but we don't know what to do with it. And real-time data such as Planet Labs. So do you think that, I'm just wondering about your thoughts on.
Absolutely. No, so I mean, so you've come from oil and gas. And by the way, I mean, Adil's there in Houston. I spent 20 years in Houston, and we were surrounded by oil and gas. So the seismic data, the geospatial, it's fantastic. Yes.
My background is in town planning, so I was looking at geospatial technology from the perspective of town planning. And there's incredible opportunity, but I think there's a huge skills gap. Oh, sorry.
Definitely.
Okay.
No, definitely, because you've got the situation whereby today you can go get a satellite image of Bangkok. The last time an ordnance survey, if I say ordnance survey, does most of the audience know what I mean? It's when an official map is made by a government of a town or a city. The last time an ordnance survey map of Bangkok was made, it was 1963. Right? So if you want to try and develop it, you're a city manager, what do you do? But you said something really important at the beginning, from the oil and gas. And I think that's what you're seeing. You're seeing it's not just this tech push of space, but it's markets drawing in this data, big data, as well as space data. You're giving them more tools to do their jobs more efficiently using space, and that is fantastic. We always talk about the 5 R's in remote sensing. It is, now I hope I get this right, it is the right data to the right person, in the right format, in the right price, at the right time. The 5 R's. You miss any one of those, you get the wrong data to the wrong person, poof. If it's too expensive, no. If it's in the wrong format, I want it in a computer file and you give me a piece of paper, no, etc. But I think that's a huge shift, because all of a sudden the data's there for people who couldn't use that data before, and it's changing their markets. You're giving them better eyes, better seismic data, better geospatial. It's, for the oil and gas, it's huge. Telecoms in oil and gas is enormously huge with satellite. But every other industry, I think they're just beginning to tap, like Planet Labs and others, showing them what they can do. We work with a lot of not-for-profits, and Planet Labs have been incredibly supportive of some of our work. And I can't speak highly enough of them for doing it. And it was the ISU connection that helped. And they have truly revolutionized some of the aid work we're doing in the Middle East, enabling us to get to the right people at the right time with actually life-saving equipment and everything else. So yeah, it's huge, and I think we've only just begun to tap that marketplace. Because we look from the inside the tent out, from space, we have this great tech, what are we going to do with it? And yet, when you're out there, in what we call general population, you're out there and you're looking back at us, only now is all of a sudden it's getting cheap enough and easy enough, and the data's coming in, and we have the big data, the exponential curve on the data to actually allow us to process it. It's tremendous. I'll be quiet, let them talk, because it's one of my passionate topics. I didn't know you were going to ask that. I was like, wow, fantastic, I can actually answer this one. Any other gentlemen, chip in, please. Adil knows me well.
Agreed.
No, thank you. So how about Omar, can we do one last question? Sure. Okay, one last question. Yes, whoa. Sorry, if someone shouts my name, I have to, it's a reflex. Usually means I'm in trouble. No.
Good evening. It's not a question, it's actually a comment.
Questions.
I'll pass on to this other lady over there afterwards for a question.
Okay.
Because I think we have to, we women have to be a little bit more represented here. So my name is Barbara Imhoff. I'm a co-founder of a company, Liquifer Systems Group, in Vienna, in the heart of Europe, and I founded this company with Susmita Mohanty. We are both ISU alumni from long back, actually, and it's also a company working in the field of human spaceflight. Particularly, we are tapping into taxpayers' money and serving the European Space Agency or the EU-funded programs. And I actually find everything what everybody has been saying quite interesting, and I think it's all true, and I've experienced that myself. It takes a while to kind of build up the company. It's the most important thing is a team. We have an interdisciplinary team comprising architects, engineers, scientists, sometimes artists, and that is something which makes us unique. And that is also why people ask us for partnering. So it's this aspect of being unique, having competence, having a good team, being a good team player within other larger consortia. And it also takes, of course, you have to be bold enough, you have to take a risk, you have to be patient with budgets, but you have, you can always create your own future every day, basically. And this was my comment, and I'd like to pass on to this other lady for the question.
No, well, thank you. Maybe hopefully next year you'll be up here with us. I mean, we didn't know you were here today. That'd be fantastic.
Good evening, I'm Fabiana from Italy. I have a question like, one company has success, but hundreds don't. And most of the time, co-founders fell in love with their project and they don't realize they're going to fail. So what would you like to say to these people, like which are the signals they have to catch in order to realize that they are going to fail? Thank you.
So what are the signals, gentlemen, and that maybe you've fallen in love with your own concept too much? A lot of companies don't make it. And what are the signals that you should look for that you're about to fail, or that you're in danger of doing that tunnel vision thing, where you're pushing down an avenue? And we've seen it happen in the space industry a lot. And Iridium and Globalstar popped to mind. They were so busy getting their satellite phones ready, they've missed GSM technology. Something like that. Yeah.
I think having co-founders can help you with that, because if you have an eclectic group of co-founders, they all have their own perspectives. Some are more in love with the technology, some are more in love with the market, and I think that is like a textbook answer. Have different views within the founding team. I think one of the things that usually kills companies are co-founders fighting with each other. I think that was, if I had to bet, I would say that was #1 killer of companies. So it's really important, and I think you touched on it, to have really good co-founders that are good people, because you end up, I think you told me that statistic, you end up spending more time with your co-founders than your spouses. So it's really important.
So I think that there's a couple things. So typically, especially at the beginning, there's a honeymoon phase, to borrow on the analogy. there's a honeymoon phase where you're willing to do anything, try anything. It's all fun and games, but you need to do a reality check. And as Chris mentioned, so we've started other companies, and we had a rocket propulsion technology company. We were a minority partner. We separated it. We separated it from the original company just to make sure there was that separation. But at the end of the day, you make a list of things you need to happen. Like there are a few nice to haves, and there are a couple of need to haves. And if those need to have, so if I have the retrospective view now, if those need to haves don't happen, if none of them happen or the ones you need don't happen, that's the time to have a good heart to heart and quite frankly avoid, because when it gets really hard, the nerves get frayed, and it is a signal. And to the other person, I wanted to say that my current business partner is a woman, so she's the other owner of the company. So, and she's also an ISU person. So there you go.
Gentlemen, anything? Would you like to add something? Adil, Meidad?
Yeah, sure. First of all, I solved the problem of spending too much time with your partners and not with your spouse, because my wife is my partner. She's part of the team. So that's number one. Number two is, what are the signals that you're going to fail? You open your eyes in the morning. You can fail each and every day. And I think that in order to avoid that, you must keep a very simple line of under promise and over deliver. As long as the company that you build will under promise and over deliver, the chances of you to fail are lower.
Adil, I think you wanted to add something there too.
Yeah, I mean, I was just going to add very quickly that I think having the humility to respect others' opinion, which ISU amply teaches you as well, I think that's very helpful. It's been very productive for me to be able to sit down and have those difficult conversations where I have been wrong, and listen to my co-founders and partners and go, you know what, you guys are right. This was a bad idea. We learned something out over here, but we need to, course correct. And so, not everyone can be right all the time, and just recognizing that about yourself is very helpful, I think.
Yonathan.
Yeah, I wanted to ask one question for the panel, and I think it's really important for the people here in ISU thinking, oh, this is a great experience, we're loving it, we're going home, and then what? What's going to happen? And I want the people on the panel to raise their hand if they have business or partners or any other relationship that came off of ISU or as a result of ISU. So I think it's a sounding yes. So this experience, although it's short, it's only a few weeks, not a lot of weeks, and you're probably going to go home, and your day-to-day life will not change the moment you step back. But over time, you would see that ISU does help you in creating the connections and your future partnerships or future co-founders. And I think it's really, really valuable that you would, the value of this you would see long after the program is over.
Very good for networking. Absolutely. That was a secret hint. So. Now, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to call it quits because, do you know how hard it is? Entrepreneurs work really hard. We don't sleep. Do you know how hard it is to get 3 of them in the room and 2 of them online? So we're very fortunate to have them here today. And I would really like to give a warm thanks to the people who volunteered, given their time to come here and to talk about this tonight. And Yonathan also taught here today on entrepreneurship as well, and I heard about it incredibly well, and thank you. So ladies and gentlemen, please.
Well, on behalf of the International Space University, we'd like to appreciate your time for being here with us this evening, and would like to give you a small token of appreciation here.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Wow. It's the Earth.
And Meidad and Adil is coming in the mail.
You're free to go, honestly, you really are.